Go back up to Capitol Hill. Congressman Bruce Westerman, who is another member of this House Natural Resources Committee, a Republican from Arkansas, joining us there. He's also a member of the Budget Committee. Congressman, we started out talking to your colleague, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, about this energy conference bill and her priorities. What are your priorities for the two sides, the House and Senate conference members, to come together? What are the major provisions that you're looking at?
Good morning. It's good to be with you. The major issues that I'm really concerned about and focused on the energy bill have to do with wildfire and funding for fighting wildfire and how we improve the health of our forest. We've got a tremendous resource in our national forest, but unfortunately, because of lack of management over several decades, we're seeing a lot of that prized timberland go up in flames. We're emitting as much as 100 million tons a year of carbon into the atmosphere. We're destroying wildlife habitat, and also a healthy forest means clean air, clean water, and everybody wins when we have healthy forests. So I'm really focused on the forestry side of the bill, or of the energy conference, and look forward to working on that.
Well, that makes sense, given you're the only professional forester in Congress. We'll talk about that. First, explain what you would like language to say in this energy bill to address this issue.
Well, we've got a major issue with, it's a phenomenon we call fire borrowing. Because we have such catastrophic wildfire events, the cost of fires have gone up from 1/6 of the budget about 20 years ago up to over half of the budget. I think 52–54% of the Forest Service budget goes to fighting fires. When that happens, and that's mainly being spent out west, that takes money away from forest in Arkansas and in the east, and it really pulls money away from good management practices. So it kind of perpetuates the problem when we're spending all of the funding to fight fires and we're not able to do good management practices to make the forest more healthy and resilient. So one provision we've got in there is to put catastrophic wildfires under FEMA, so if they can be declared an emergency and we can get FEMA funding when we have those catastrophic events. We really need to be spending more money doing proactive management to get our forests thinned and to make them healthy so that we don't get the insect infestations, which leads to dead timber, leads to more fuel on the ground, and then you get a lightning strike or somebody lets a campfire out, and we're seeing these catastrophic events.
By the way, I want to show our viewers where there are federal forests in this country. If you take a look at this map, you can see where federal forests exist. I'm sure you're familiar with this map, Congressman.
Right.
What does it mean that, as viewers are looking at this, as they're seeing federal forests primarily in the west, but along the south as well?
Yeah, well, in my district in Arkansas, I've got over 2 million acres of federal forest in my district. That's small in comparison to some of the large forests out west, but I believe on a non-state congressional district, where the district's not a whole state, that my district actually contains more federal forest land than any other district in the country. But we're seeing more arid conditions out west. We stopped cutting timber a couple of decades ago, or a little longer than that. The timber continues to grow, and it tries to fill up the growing space, and you get competition. The trees get weakened. They're subject to insect and disease infestations, and nature's way of correcting that is to burn it down and start over. But unfortunately, we have these assets there. We have people living in these communities, and we can't all the time just let these fires burn. And we see such intensity in some of the fires now that it actually damages the soil. When you lose vegetation, you get rain, and the runoff causes erosion to get in our water and pollute it. Wildfires don't have stream-side buffer zones. They burn right down to the edge of the stream, so you'll see trout streams that the temperature increases, and it does damage to the fish populations there. So it's really a big issue. We've got a tremendous resource in our forest. If you look at just the amount of energy that went up in the 10 million acres that burned last year, it would be the equivalent to 25 billion gallons of gasoline or more. So it's a huge issue. It happens more so out west, but we may not get the fires back in Arkansas or in the east like they do out west, but our forests, when they're not healthy, are still subject to insect and disease infestation.
All right, Congressman, let's get to calls. We're asking our viewers to tell us what changes they would make to U.S. energy policy. So we'll open up that conversation with them. Glenn in Myersville, Maryland, an independent. Hi there, Glenn.
Yes.
Good morning. You're on the air. Go ahead with the congressman.
Hello.
Hi, Glenn. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Glenn.
All right, Glenn, you got to get ready to go. We'll go to Don in Sacramento, California, a Republican. Hi, Don.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Hey, listen, Congressman, it does seem like you're dealing with the symptoms. You're dealing with the symptoms, but not the reality of what's going on. It's more or less after the fact, I would say. Just one question: Do you believe that global warming is actually happening? And do you have any, as a disclaimer, do you have any sponsorship from the fossil industry?
On the global warming issue or the climate change issue, the climate is changing, whether that's man-made or not. I think the verdict's still out on that. But one thing we do know is that healthy forests sequester carbon, and the better trees grow, and the faster they grow, the more carbon they sequester. And also, when we use wood as a building material, we're storing carbon in the buildings. When the land is reforested, you get new growth that's pulling more carbon out of the atmosphere. So regardless of what your thoughts are on climate change, whether it's man-made or it's all natural, healthy forests are part of the solution to that because they do sequester carbon. And the more we use our forest, the faster they will grow. It's a biological growth curve. It happens with all living organisms, where the younger they are, the faster they grow. But we've got to do a better job making sure we reforest these areas, whether they're damaged by fire or insects or disease. One part that's in the forestry language in the energy bill says that we have to get 75% reforestation after 5 years. Which is still not great. I would like to see that number higher, but if you look at what's happening now, we're only getting 3 to 5% reforestation on our forests after these catastrophic wildfires.
Let's go to Gene in Bowie, Maryland, Democrat.
Good morning. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning.
I would hope you would consider supporting the Open Fuel Standard Act bill that's before Congress for 3 reasons. First, hydrogen, a gallon of methanol has more hydrogen than a gallon of gasoline or a gallon of ethanol. Therefore, it inherently is more efficient to make use of that energy. Second, MIT has developed 2 engines, one that outperforms diesel for trucks, and it's less polluting and less costly in fuel. And the second one is for automobiles, and the same thing. It outperforms at 100 octane. You get 100 octane performance at less price than regular gas. And then the final reason is a procedure for a new procedure for producing methanol from coal, developed by Johns Hopkins in the 80s, has now been developed by the Department of Energy into a commercial scale plant in Tennessee that produces methanol from coal without emissions at a cost of approximately 50 cents a gallon wholesale. So for those 3 reasons, and methanol is not asking for any subsidy or any mandate, just for a chance to compete at the pump.
Gene, you bring out some really good points in your question, and we need to look at all of our opportunities with energy, and research is extremely important. I've got a graduate degree in forestry, but my undergraduate is in engineering, so I really like to talk about energy issues, and we need to have an all-of-the-above energy strategy. And you also brought out a great point about how we need energy that doesn't need subsidies, and with technology I think we'll be able to better harness the energy that occurs naturally in woody biomass. We'll be able to use the energy in coal more efficiently and cleaner. And we need to be investing more money into research, and there's some exciting things on the horizon. Methanol is a product that was made from wood back around World War II. A lot of that process has gone away from wood, but there's some very smart chemists in the world, very smart chemical engineers, and we need to be looking at all these energy resources that we got and figure out ways to make them all economically competitive. And when we're in this situation right now where traditional fuels are lower cost, I think this is a time when we need to be investing more in our future fuels, so that when the price of our traditional fuels goes up, that we'll have these future fuels more competitive.
Charlie, Palm City, Florida, Republican.
Yes, thanks for C-SPAN. Congressman, while you're on the forestry issue, I used to work for the Forest Service, and I was a firefighter for a number of years. And when I went to work in Montana and Colorado, the timberlands up there were sold off by the large timber companies to real estate developers, because when the gas crunch hit in the 70s, they couldn't afford to haul the timber out of the Forest Service because the trees were too small. So you have literally hundreds of thousands and millions of acres that have been sold off to real estate developers, people building houses up in the forest. And then we get these wildfires, and like you see in California and Colorado, people are losing their lives. So, you need to address the fact that, county agencies are actually rezoning these properties from forestry to residential. The other energy question I had for you that concerns me is that, my mom lived up in Kentucky where Louisville Gas and Electric was for decades. And under the federal laws, you're not going to have 50 energy companies coming in and building power flows and power plants to provide electricity. So you had LG&E there that provided a low cost. Her monthly bill was $35 a month. Reagan came in, Republicans came in, and it was really like the banking industry. They deregulated everything. So LG&E got sold off to a British firm and then sold off to a German firm. And it's no different than Duke Power coming into eastern Kentucky, or Georgia Power coming down, or Duke Power coming into Florida and buying out Florida power companies. And all of a sudden you see your bills go through the roof.
All right, Charlie, thank you. Congressman.
Yeah, well, let's address the issue on buildings and structures in and around our federal lands. The reality is that this has happened. We have homes on the in the wildlands adjacent to federal timberlands in areas where we do get these catastrophic wildfires. There are programs, one of them is called FireWise, where you can try to make your home and your property as resistant to wildfire as possible. Part of that has to do with construction materials, clearing out underbrush, creating a buffer zone around your homes. I think we need to do more of those programs. But we also need to get our federal forests where they're more resilient, so that we're not getting the big wildfires moving through there. Forestry is relatively new science here in the United States. It's been around for just over 100 years, and we've been learning a lot, but we know the science. It's been practiced in Europe for a long time, but we know how to go in and manage these forests sustainably using science-based methods to make them more healthy and vigorous, so that we can protect them from wildfires and disease. And those are the kind of issues that we have to include in this energy bill, so that we're not just throwing more money at the fire borrowing issue, but we're actually addressing the problems, and we're not just putting a Band-Aid on the problems. Again, when we talk about energy and the different types of energy that are out there, it needs to be an all of the above strategy. There's pros and cons of deregulation, but it allows us to produce energy in one part of the country and use it in another part of the country. I'm more concerned about us putting too many restrictions on certain types of energy, picking winners and losers. I know that those kinds of strategies will hurt my constituents back home, and it not only hurts us with our electric bills and our residences, but when manufacturers rely heavily on electricity or other forms of energy, and the cost of that energy goes up, it drives jobs away. And a lot of these regulations that are put out there to target traditional fuels are there in the name of making the environment cleaner. But if we're driving these jobs away from the United States into countries who don't have nearly as good of air quality regulations that we have, we're not only losing jobs and hurting the economy, we're also making the environment less clean.
Congressman Bruce Westerman, an engineer and forester for 22 years, serving in his first term in Congress and a member of the House Natural Resources Committee. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.